Y'all, this man hacked into her school email. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So with the new school year starting up, I wanted to try something a little new. I've never filmed a story time before, but I love watching other people's, and personally I have a lot of crazy stories, especially from college, so I thought it would be fun with people starting to go back to school to share one of those stories with you guys today. So this specific video is going to be about my freshman roommate horror story. I didn't have a ton of luck when it came to roommates in college, but it caused for a lot of really interesting experiences and stories. So obviously I am only using fake names for this story. I don't think my old roommate will find this video because we haven't spoken in years, but whether she does or not, I don't hold any ill will towards her. She was a very nice girl. I just thought it would be fun to share my side of the story and how things went down that freshman year in our dorm. So this story takes place in 2014, immediately after I graduated high school. And that was 6 years ago, so some of the details may not be completely spot on, but I'll do my best to keep the timeline in order for you guys. For story purposes, I'm gonna be calling my roommate Amy. So I didn't know anyone going to the same college as me during my freshman year, and because of that, I opted to get matched with a random roommate. So when we first got matched as roommates, the school gave us each other's emails, and we didn't talk a whole lot leading up to move-in day, just little logistical things like who's bringing a microwave, who's gonna get there first, and those types of things. Move-in day comes along, and I did actually get there first. So I took the bed farthest from the door, set up my sheets, got all my things moved in. She came, moved in, it was great. She didn't actually know anyone going to the school either. So we ended up going to a lot of the introductory school program, meet each other, meetings together. And I actually thought we were going to be really good friends because we were doing all this stuff together. But there were certain things about Amy that just kind of gave off red flags. To start, she had this boyfriend who I'll call Michael that she met online, which is totally fine. You know, I have friends that I've met online. I've never had an online relationship, but I have a ton of friends who have, and it's been great. You know, they've really flourished, and that's not weird to me at all. What was weird to me was the fact that Amy and Michael had they'd never met each other, which wasn't entirely strange because according to her, he lived a few states away. But they had also never FaceTimed or even talked on the phone. All she knew of this man was from his Instagram account and when they would text each other. I actually checked out his Instagram account and it just looked kind of fake. But she had never even heard his voice. They had been dating for a few months prior to move-in day and pretty much had just never spoken outside of text. Still, though, I was of the mindset, you know, not my relationship, you know, everybody has their own preferences, to each their own, you know, totally fine. So school starts progressing and I'm eager to get out, make friends, meet new people. And I always made sure to invite Amy along. She seemed kind of shy, like, you know, she didn't really go out and do a lot, which is fine, but I never wanted her to feel like she was being excluded. So I always made sure to extend an invitation. And she always really turned it down, which I didn't think was a big deal. You know, not everybody likes going out and socializing with a group of people. So I didn't think much of it until I found out that the reason she was always declining was because Michael told her she wasn't allowed to go out. So this man, who was older than us, was telling Amy that she wasn't allowed to go out and hang out with, you know, other people outside of the school mandated activities. And this immediately made me concerned because I've been in a controlling relationship, and someone telling you what you can and cannot do is controlling and manipulative and kind of abusive. I didn't want to offend her or make her feel like I was judging her relationship, but I did say a few times like, hey, Amy, you know, it's not really cool that he's making those demands and setting these rules for you like he's your parent. She just kind of brushed it off, so I was like, okay, and I went about doing my own thing. This behavior from Michael quickly progressed to the point where he was constantly texting her things and accusing her of going out without telling him and hiding all these secrets from him and cheating on him. And I mean, I lived with her, so I knew for a fact that these things he was accusing her of were not happening. But he would get so aggressive and berate her over text to the point where she would be having panic attacks in our dorm room, crying her eyes out. So at this point in the semester, I was genuinely concerned for my roommate's mental health. It came out that none of her family approved of this relationship or of Michael, and they all really wanted her to leave the relationship, but she was full on convinced that they were going to get married, have a house, have kids, the whole 9 yards, with a guy she had never even spoken on the phone with. So I kind of stopped inviting Amy out at this point because it was obvious that she didn't want to, whether by her own choice or by Michael's. But then she started judging me every time I went out to do something with people. It got to the point where I would get ready to go out with some friends and she'd be like, "Oh, you're going out again?" And it's like, I get it if you don't want to do that and that's not your thing. That's totally fine. But, it's like, don't judge me for wanting to go out and make friends. We just moved to this school. I really wanted to meet people. And it was just kind of uncomfortable. And then one night came, I was going out with a group of mutual friends between Amy and I, and she decided that she did want to come along. And I was a little surprised, but I was like, yes, of course, please come join us. This will be great. We're going to have a great time. And we did. We went out, we hung out with our friends, we played some games, and then Amy and I went back to our dorm together. It was a great time. The next morning, she was getting text message after text message after text message from Michael saying how he knew we went out and he knew where we were, he knew whose house we were at, but then was going on to accuse her of sleeping with all these people and doing all these drugs and a bunch of stuff that we didn't do. But I was really weirded out over some of the facts he did pull out. A man who supposedly lives states away from us knew the specific names of whose house we were at and who was there. So now Amy is in our room, bawling her eyes out again, saying she made a mistake and thinking she actually did something wrong by hanging out with her friends. A few days later, this box appeared in her mailbox. She brought it up to the room. She and Michael had kind of made up at this point, which mainly meant that she'd apologized and said she'd never do it again, and he forgave her. So she brings this box up to our room, and it's from Michael. So for a man who won't even speak on the phone with her, I was a little concerned that he knew our address and our school's address and our dorm address. So she opens the box, and it's one of those massive person-sized teddy bears. And Michael's texting her like, "I don't want to lose you. I just want you to know how much I care about you." And Amy is over the moon. I, on the other hand, am beside myself. But again, I don't want to attack her relationship that she's obviously very emotionally invested in. So at the time, I say nothing. I did, however, in the next few days, start lately trying to point out certain things that didn't really add up with Michael's stories. Certain things like he will say he's going to call her and then disappear for days on end, not answer any of her messages, obviously never called. The fact that he knew certain details that Amy didn't tell him when he supposedly lives in a completely different state. It was weird. It was just very weird. I was completely convinced at this point in the year that Amy had no idea who she was actually talking to and texting with. I didn't believe that it was actually the man in the Instagram account she had. I wasn't even sure there really was a Michael at this point. But she did start to get a little more aggressive with him about it. So she convinces him to come to our campus to visit. I'm like, okay. At this point, Ian had visited a couple times. He'd seen our dorm. He'd met Amy. So I definitely wanted her to feel like, it was okay for her boyfriend to come visit. Totally fine. I would honestly love to meet this guy. So they get all the details figured out. He's going to drive from his state to our campus. And then the day comes when he's supposed to arrive. And that morning, he starts texting her all these accusations again. They get into an apocalyptic fight. She's apologizing and asking him to please still come visit. He tells her that he is in our college town, but doesn't want to see her because they're fighting. So he is telling her that he is in our college town, but will not come see her because of this fight. She was a complete wreck, and I just wanted to stay completely out of it because it was getting past the point of what I could handle. Needless to say, he never came to visit or introduce himself. As I said earlier, Ian had come and visited a few times. He and I hadn't been dating very long at that point, but I tried to always make sure I was respectful about it. You know, I would ask Amy's permission before inviting him to the dorm. I would make sure she was okay with it, all these things, and she was always agreeable and cool with it. So this one weekend, Ian comes over, he spends the weekend, and the Monday after he leaves, Amy starts getting these messages from Michael, and he is now accusing her of cheating on him with my boyfriend. Not that I wasn't already, but I was so uncomfortable at this point. Ian and I were not apart at any point during that weekend, so I know that none of Michael's accusations were even remotely accurate. But at that point, I stopped inviting Ian over. I just wasn't comfortable with this situation anymore. I stopped inviting Amy out. I blocked Michael on all of my social media, yet somehow he was still finding a way to find my posts and was carrying his accusations in line with what I was posting. So he was now stalking my social media to make accusations of Amy. So not only was he mentally abusing her, but he was stalking me to do it. So I was completely over the situation at this point, and I told her point blank that she needed to get him to stop, or I was going to have to get someone from the school involved, because I was actually starting to feel like in danger. She agreed that it was getting out of hand and supposedly had a conversation with him about it. Y'all, this man hacked into her school email to find out more information about her. He literally read through every single one of her emails in her school email account and then started making accusations based off of what he read in her school email. I was actually scared at this point. So one night around that same time, Amy was in bed crying again because of all these fights they were having. And I told her point blank, I was like, Amy, this is unhealthy. This is scary. He's very manipulative. He seems kind of dangerous. I really think you need to get out of this situation. I don't think you're safe. I think this is very unhealthy for you. She actually agreed with me, and I thought this might be the start of some progress. I thought this was like a really good sign. So after we had that conversation, I went out with some friends, and when I came back that night, Amy was asleep in her bed. The next morning, I'm woken up by the sound of drawers being banged and closets opened and all this ruckus. So I sit up and Amy is standing there emptying her drawers into boxes. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she turns around, I'm still in bed, and she goes, I didn't want you to find out this way, but you've made this environment very toxic, so I'm moving out. First of all, I wasn't the one who made this a toxic environment. Second of all, didn't want me to find out what way. She literally woke me up with her aggressive packing. So I'm like, I cannot even deal with this insanity anymore. I kind of just looked at her with this blank stare, and she started getting all defensive. So I was just like, you know what? Do what you gotta do, girl. And I pulled the blankets over my head and I went back to sleep. Could I have handled the situation better? Yes. Was I past the point of caring to do so? Also, yes. I could hear her through the blankets, like trying to apologize, which was kind of weird, but I mentally could not handle it anymore. So I kept the blankets over my head until I heard her leave the room. And then I got dressed and went to my classes. After that, Amy completely avoided me on campus. And then I sort of just stopped seeing her around. So a couple years later, I want to say 2016, the second semester of my sophomore year, I ran into a mutual friend of ours. This was actually the girl that Amy moved in with after she moved out of our dorm. This girl and I always got along, though. She was super sweet, always very nice to me. So we stop and we catch up for a while, and I take the chance and I ask, and I was like, hey, have you heard from Amy at all recently? You know, I stopped seeing her around school. What happened to her? This girl was also around our entire freshman year. She knew of Amy's entire situation. She knew of everything that went down with Amy and myself. She knew about Michael. She knew all of it. And she proceeds to tell me that after Amy moved out, she actually did build up enough courage to break up with Michael. And I'm like, good for her. I was genuinely very happy for her. She then followed it up with, Amy then decided to drop out of school to move to another state to live with another man she met online. I honestly do not hold anything against Amy. You know, we were both very young. She was obviously in a situation that just got completely out of control, and neither of us knew how to deal with it. I don't think either of us really handled the situation as well as we could have. I really do hope she's doing well wherever she is. I have not gotten an update on her since that talk in 2016 with our mutual friend, but overall, she and I were just trying to figure things out in life, just like anybody else at that time and age. So that is my freshman year roommate horror story. Let me know in the comments if you guys have ever had a crazy roommate experience like this. If you want to hear more storytime videos, or if you want to hear another one of my crazy roommate experiences from college, then be sure to give this video a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and check out my latest video if you haven't already. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!